A man sitting beside Mother Matilda pleaded, "Your mother-in-law is only reminding you that we have all been requested to stop drumming our fingers and to stop racing back and forth. The angels don't appreciate having to answer hundreds of requests for better television reception." "I know, William, I know," Eleanor answered. "After all," Mother Matilda added, "we are every bit as anxious as you are to know the outcome of today's judgment." "You ought to be patient, my lady," William said. "Yes," Eleanor answered, "I know. I know what I ought to be. I have always known what I ought to be." But the truth was that Eleanor actually enjoyed not being patient. When she felt impatient, she felt something close to being alive again. Even after more than 500 years in heaven, Eleanor of Aquitaine still missed quarreling and dressing up. Eleanor missed strong, sweet smells. Eleanor missed feeling hot and being cold. Eleanor missed Henry. She missed life. She sighed. She wanted to be there the minute Henry arrived, if he would. There was a great deal to tell him. It had taken Eleanor almost 500 years to catch up on 200 she had missed. She often thought that the worst thing about time spent in hell is that a person has no way of knowing what is happening on earth. In heaven, at least one could watch, even if one could not participate. Only saints and angels were allowed to interfere in earthly affairs. Everyone in heaven had periods of earth time about which they knew nothing. Everyone except saints. They always came up immediately following death, and of course, heaven had always been home to the angels. But saints were hardly the people to contact when you wanted to catch up on the news. Most of them had been more concerned with heaven than with earth, even during their lifetimes, and now it was almost impossible to move them even a whisper away from the angels. Eleanor turned around, looking toward the night side of earth. Perhaps she could spot an outdoor movie screen. Watching that would help her pass some minutes. As she turned her face toward the night, and her back toward the two people waiting with her, she spotted Abbot Sugar. Eleanor called to him, and the good abbot stopped to rest at her side. "Haven't seen you for a long time, Abbot," she said. "Oh," he answered, "I was over at admissions. They just let an English teacher up, and he made a beeline for Shakespeare. They all do." "Yes, I know," said the abbot, chuckled, "but I like to watch." What did this one want to discuss? Abbot Sugar laughed out loud. This one didn't want to discuss anything. He presented Mr. Shakespeare with a list of errors he had made in geography and history. "I wonder how he smuggled his list past the judges. No one is supposed to carry a single grudge into heaven, let alone a list of them." "Oh, I don't know," the abbot said. "I sometimes suspect that the judges close an eye. It's always fun to see an English teacher's first encounter with Shakespeare. I think that the judges, serious as they are, enjoy it too." Eleanor said, half to herself, "Shakespeare wrote a play about my son King John that wasn't too accurate either. He gave me a small part in it, but he certainly didn't give me any good lines." "Ah, Eleanor," Abbot Sugar replied. "Shakespeare was far better at writing of heroes than of heroines." "Maybe so," she said, "but then I wonder why he wrote nothing of Henry." "Oh, my goodness," Sugar said. "He wrote of Henry. Plenty of Henrys. He wrote Henry the Fourth, Henry the Fifth, parts 1 and 2, Henry the Sixth, part 1, and Henry the Sixth, part 2. But not my Henry," Eleanor shouted. "Eleanor, Eleanor," Abbot Sugar said, "calm down." "You never knew my Henry," Eleanor said. "You only knew Louis, my first husband." "And my foremost pupil," the abbot added. "Shakespeare should have written about my Henry." Eleanor poked at the cloud absent-mindedly. She continued staring at the cloud and said in a low voice, "Henry is being judged today. That's why I'm so excitable. And that's why they're here," she added. flinging a look over her shoulder. "The lady is Henry's mother, Matilda Empress, and the man is William the Marshal, a true and loyal knight." Abbot Sugar glanced in the direction that Eleanor indicated and nodded and smiled at the man and the woman. They nodded back. The abbot then leaned closer to Eleanor and asked, "Who is pleading Henry's case?" "Lawyers," Eleanor answered. "I always knew that if we ever got lawyers into heaven, they would plead for him." "Why would lawyers plead for a king? Kings have long been out of fashion with the law." "My Henry laid the foundation of the whole court system of England," Eleanor announced proudly. "Really?" "Henry was due up long before this, but it has taken almost 800 years to get enough lawyers up to make a case." "Yes," Abbot Sugar agreed. "In heaven, lawyers are as hard to find as bank presidents." Abbot Sugar nodded his head, trying to remember something back in the centuries. "Eleanor," he said hesitatingly, "was it not Henry who made you a prisoner?" "It certainly was," Eleanor agreed. "Henry kept me locked up for 15 years." "And you still want him with you in heaven?" "Oh, goodness, yes. I think heaven is much what he deserves. I want him to be every bit as bored as I am." She laughed, looking quickly over at Sugar to see if she had made him angry. After all, Abbot Sugar was a priest, and priests have always held heaven in very high regard. But Abbot Sugar was not angry. He had a good sense of humor. He had always been a favorite of Eleanor's. Abbot Sugar asked, "Why did you divorce Louis? I was below when you did it. I missed it." "I knew you would not go straight to heaven. I knew that you were too much in love with the world for an abbot. Actually, Eleanor, I have no complaints. Any man with responsibilities in government is bound for hell, at least for a little while. But I spent less than a century below. I arrived up shortly before you did. I looked down on you on your deathbed. You seem to have died in peace. How did you know that Henry had made me a prisoner?" "Oh, the usual deathbed gossip, accounting good deeds and bad." "My divorce from Louis listed in the good column or the bad?" "The bad. Why did you divorce him?" Eleanor tilted her head and smiled. "Because you weren't there any longer to hold us together, I guess. You died, remember?" "Of course I remember dying. I remember everything. I remember our first meeting in Bordeaux when you were to wed the young Louis, the boy whom I had taught to love God." "How did Eleanor appear to you when you first saw her?" Matilda Empress asked, moving forward. "That is hard to say," Abbot Sugar answered. "Why?" "Because my first look at her was colored by her reputation and her wealth." Matilda Empress smiled. "I must say that I too had an eye on Eleanor's lands before I set my eyes on her." "And I," said William the Marshal, "first encountered Queen Eleanor in defense of her person and her wealth." No one said anything. "As well befitted a man of my calling," William added. Everyone looked at William, but still they said nothing. "I was a knight, you know." "Yes, we know," said Matilda Empress. "Yes," Eleanor added, "a true and noble knight." Matilda Empress turned from William and addressed the abbot. "I am curious about the young Eleanor. My mother-in-law cannot believe that what I am now is an improvement over what I was then. Tell her what she wants to know, Abbot Sugar. Tell her about the young Eleanor. It will help all of us to pass the time." "Certainly," Abbot Sugar said. "It is good to review. Ah, Abbot, you too miss living. Heaven is often a pale substitute." Sugar spun his head around toward Eleanor. He attempted a frown, but he couldn't manage one. His face broke into a broad grin. Bite your tongue, lady. Eleanor laughed. Certainly, Abbot. I only speak it even though we both know it. Now let us remember. Come, Abbot, Matilda, William, come. Let us remember together.